Thanks. Yeah, thank you. It's recording.
All right. Rabbi Mayerfeld, can you teach us?
Yes, okay, so first name for Shifra Simcha Bat Yet and all Cholim of Klal Yisrael.
Name?
Let's go. Okay. Malava Malka. After Havdalah, one sets the table in order to accompany the departing Shabbos with a meal. If one is able to eat a full meal, a snack would suffice. I don't know how many of you do Malava Malkas often. So some people have cake or fruit, or but you have it in mind for Malava Malka on Motzei Shabbos. Damon, do you have a Malava Malka off from time to time?
Allergic to dairy. Where's this thing that you have dairy? It obviously has some sort of significance.
It hasn't given any. It hasn't given any examples of what you can have from Malava Malka.
Yeah, but the word Malka means milking.
No, Malka is queen.
Queen.
Malka.
Oh, so it's
Malka.
taking up the Shabbos bride. But why do people have it mainly milking? Do you know?
No, they don't.
Because they don't want to invite me and you, Damon.
Okay,
No,
maybe
yeah.
that's
No, I don't know. It can be.
It's normally always pizza. Eh? Normally always.
It's always milking.
No,
Yeah.
It's always milking. Yeah.
Some people have fruit. Some people. It depends. Maybe. Okay, maybe. Okay.
No, privately, but if they invite people over, if there's a big group there.
Okay, so continue to teach us, Kev.
Okay, it's customary to sing Zmiros about Eliyahu the prophet at this meal, since it is hoped that he will arrive after Shabbos to announce the coming of Mashiach.
Okay.
That I didn't know.
Yeah, I didn't know that either.
The Roman Emperor Hadrian asked Rabbi Yehoshua ben Hananiah, "Why do Sabbath foods have such a fragrant scent?" Rabbi Yehoshua answered, "We add a certain spice called Sabbath." The emperor said, "Give me some of that spice." Rabbi Yehoshua replied, "It is effective only for those who keep the Sabbath," and that comes from Shabbos, page 119a. Only the ones that keep the Shabbos have the fragrant scent or experience it. That's why in Havdalah you smell fragrances. Maybe that might be part of the reason. Who knows? I don't know. I wonder that could be.
Yeah.
But only those experiences will have a taste or have a smell of these fragrances.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. All right, we'll get started. Thank you, Kev. Is Arthur with us?
He's
Arthur, I'm quite happy to see you. It was just before with the screen and the whatever bobbing and the weaving, but I'd rather see you than see a blank screen. What? Yeah.
You're moving your own head.
All right. We're going to get started now. Mate? Yeah, that's great. All right, let's get started.
Yeah, I'm here.
All right, let's get started.
Well, I'm going to go back there because I'm in the chair.
All right. So I'll tell you what we dealt with. Arthur, I'm going to put you on mute because there is background noise. If you want to ask any questions, please feel free to ask. Thanks, mate. All right. So I'll tell you what we discussed last time. We discussed the depreciation of the carcass and who bears responsibility. Rabbi Meir said very clearly that it was never the damager's responsibility. And Rabbi Yehuda said, well, that it was the damager's responsibility. Why? Because they're sharing the profits of the living one and the dead one. And then what we had is Rava and Abaya there. And there was a dispute where Abaya turned around to Rava and said, look, the reality is this is how you're explaining Rav Yehuda. What's the story? Because when we learn about a pit or a fire or any of the other mu'adim damages, which are all the damages apart from Keren, by the way, goring, is that we found it's mu'ad by default position. That's why it's mentioned in the Mishnah, if you remember, automatically. Keren was mentioned as a separate issue. And we're saying that, listen, if you owe full payment for an animal, and in that case, which is more stringent, we never hold the damager liable for depreciation after the carcass begins to rot, because the damaged or injured party has to quickly sell it as fast as possible. Then at the end of the day, in the case of a tum, which is much more lenient to the damager, why would we make the damager pay for any depreciation? Even if you want to say they share in, what do you call it, in the live ox and the dead one. So then the Gemara says, well, maybe we're talking about a different case. And what case are we talking about? A case of appreciation, meaning that they partner in the profitability, both the damager and the damaged party, if the carcass goes up in value. So we can't be talking about depreciation for that very reason. So now we're talking about a case of appreciation, meaning who shares in the benefit if it goes up. Okay, are you with me, guys?
Yeah.
So far in terms of the discussion. I hope I summarized it okay in my own lingo.
Very
Hope
good.
so. All right, so basically Rabbi Yochanan said, the matter of who benefits from appreciation of the carcass after death is the issue between them. For one master, Rabbi Meir, holds that it is entirely the damaged party's benefit. And the other master, Rabbi Yehuda, holds that only half of the benefit is the damaged parties, and the other half is reckoned as the damager's benefit in terms of reducing his liability. So Rabbi Yochanan is very fair. He was saying before, according to Rabbi's explanation, is that, listen, both the damager and damaged share in the carcass. So therefore, if there's depreciation, they both take a hit. Now that there's appreciation and the value's got up, they both take a benefit. So he's consistent with his own opinion. Very consistent, no issue. And Rabbi Meir is consistent with his opinion. What is his opinion? He said, listen, appreciation has nothing to do with it. Again, what's the calculation when it says you shall take the live one and divide it and the dead one too you shall divide? Very simple. You're saying you take the value of the live animal. You take the value of what the carcass is worth. And if it's muad, you pay the full difference from choice property. And if it's not muad and it's tam, you pay half. Whatever the difference is between the live and the dead animal. And if the carcass depreciates, it's the damaged party's loss because he should have tarried, as the term goes, which means hurried along and sold it before it starts to rot, because the default position is it is going to rot. Well, so he has to move quick. And if it appreciates and the damaged party scored the lotto that the price of carcass went up because filet mignon went up a kilogram, and now all of a sudden everybody wants that sort of steak, well, great. At the end of the day, the damaged party has recovered some of his losses, but the damager can't take a benefit because he wasn't responsible for depreciation either. So both of them are consistent with their own opinion. I don't know if I'm making sense, guys.
To me, yeah.
Okay. Kev, are you with me?
Not really. Mine's a bit out of it. But anyway, can you repeat it?
Yeah. Okay. So what we're saying is Rabbi Yehuda says, look, the damager and the damaged share in the benefit and they share in the loss. And Rabbi Meir says the damaged party takes a hit if there's a loss and the carcass starts to rot. And if the damaged party's carcass appreciates, he gets the full benefit. The only thing the damager has to do is pay the difference between the live and the dead animal. If it's muad, it's full. If it's tam, it's half. That's it. That's the summary. So far, that's where we're holding. Okay. I don't want to use complicated phrasing, guys, because I think if you can explain it simply, it makes more sense. Fine.
Absolutely.
So what we're saying here is let's use a bit of maths. So let's say the dispute, for example, pertains to a case where an animal that was worth 200 zuz was gored to death, right? And its carcass was worth 100 zuz. Okay? So if it was gored to death and it was worth 200 zuz while it's alive and the carcass is worth 100 zuz, what do you have to pay as a difference?
Is it a tam ox or a what?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's a good question. So if it was a muad, you'd have to pay the full difference of 100. If it was tam, 50. That's good. Good. But now what we're saying is that the carcass itself went from being worth 100 zuz to being worth now 120 zuz. Okay, so according to Rabbi Meir, the damager has no stake in the carcass, so he's liable for half depreciation caused by death. So he either owes 100 zuz or he owes 50 zuz. And that if it appreciated by 20 zuz, it just means that the damaged party benefited. So now he's losing far less. Does that make sense? The damager doesn't deserve a share in it. And according to Rav Yehuda, the damager takes half the carcass. And because this is only the case, Gavin, of a tam, by the way. But there's no such thing as sharing the carcass of the live one and the dead one with regards to muad. You must know that. This is only a discussion with regards to tam. I just want to clarify that's the caveat. So since that's the case, according to Rabbi Yehudi, the damager takes half the carcass because he's considered like a partner in it in respect to the liability. And since he's a partner, it's diminished, okay, by the increase in the value after death. Okay, but there is an interesting case here, is that it seems that even in the case of a muad, there's still a degree of partnership in one particular respect, not with the living ox, but it seems that there is a benefit given according to Rabbi Yehuda for the dead ox. Let me explain what I mean, Gavin. This is unusual. Right. So in the case of a muad, if for example it appreciated by 20 zuz, right, the damager would only owe 90 zuz. So what we're saying is they do get the benefit in this case of muad according to Rabbi Yehuda, meaning my ox that was gored while Betsy was alive and workhorse and a great cow. She was worth 200 zuz. She's dead as a door now, and she's good for steak. She's worth 100 zuz. Apparently, the market for steak has gone up, and everybody wants it. Okay, so since that, it's now worth 120 zuz. But you would have owed me 100 zuz, Gavin. The difference between 100 zuz, between the 200 zuz of the alive and 100 zuz dead. As a muad, you would owe me 100 zuz from choice property. But since you've got a share, we're not partners in the live ox, okay, according to Rabbi Yehuda, because you're paying with cash for choice property, but you are entitled to the appreciation benefit, but not the full benefit. You don't get to pay 80. As the damaged party of the 20 zuz appreciation, I get 10, and you get 10, which means as a muad person, now you only owe me 90. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And since you only owe me 90, what that means is that, Arthur, why am I not seeing you? I understand why I'm not hearing you.
Sorry, Damon, you said both two people get 10. So then in the word that's only 80, not 90. You said two people only.
No.
No.
So let me just repeat what I'm saying. The Oxwell, the damager doesn't get the benefit of the full 20 zuz. They're partners in the carcass.
Ah, okay, yes.
So they share the benefit, meaning the damaged party actually deserves all of it. But since Rav Yehuda says that they share in the benefit, they share in the appreciation and depreciation. Okay, I'll just stay on the camera, mate. I don't know. I feel like it's just the three of us. I like to see Arthur every day. There's a peekaboo, hide and seek.
James, the internet is not there, so.
Are you saying you're taking away the video because it?
Hear you or you see me?
I don't know. Okay, I get what you're saying. Sorry, mate. You're not at home with the strong ratio. I just miss your face. All right. I just miss your face. I get it. All right, no problem. All right, so this is what we're saying, Kevin. Gavin would owe me 100 zuz, because the difference between the attacking. I'm just putting alt on mute. It's like shady pounds here. Oh, give me a sec. Oh, put yourself on mute. All right.
So it goes off at this, what it does.
Okay. All right. So, Kev, let me just explain this to you. It's actually very, very straightforward. Okay. There's Reuven and Shimon. Reuven's ox killed Shimon's ox. Shimon's ox, while alive, was worth 200 zuz. Kevin, was worth 200 zuz while it was alive. It's now worth 100 zuz as a dead animal. The price of steak has gone up in the marketplace, and now it's worth 120 zuz. It doesn't mean as the damager, you only pay me 80 zuz, because as a damager, you're not entitled to the full benefit. You are only entitled to half the benefit of the carcass. So, which means I, as the damaged party, would keep the 10 zuz of appreciation of the carcass. You, as the damager, would keep 10 zuz of the appreciation, according to Rabbi Yehuda. Therefore, as a murad, you would owe me 90 zuz from choice property. Everybody's falling asleep.
Not me.
Kev, are you okay?
So it's not everybody, it's every second person.
Sorry?
That's correct.
Are you okay, Kev?
Yeah, whatever that means, yeah.
All right.
I continue, it's okay. Go ahead, please.
So listen, the bottom line is, if it's tam, Gavin, instead of paying 90 zuz, you pay 45 zuz. And that 45 zuz that you pay is from the attacking animal. Okay, and we divide the proceeds, and you get 45 zuz. Okay, I get to keep the rest of whatever my living animal is worth.
So they both Tam, just 1 second, Dan. So both, just to clarify something, so both Tam and Muad share in the appreciation half.
According to Rabbi Yehuda, yes.
Okay, cool.
But that means that you actually only get a quarter of the appreciation for Tam.
Yes.
This is what Rashi is trying to say. In other words, if you divide the liability by 2, your appreciation is only 1/4.
Yeah. Okay.
So, Kevin, this is what I'm trying to say. Living animal was 200 zuz. When it was dead, it was worth 100 zuz. The price of steak went up. The carcass is worth 120 zuz. Fine. What happens is, as the damaged party, I want to keep the 10 zuz of appreciation of the carcass. As the damager, I'm giving you 10 zuz of appreciation of the carcass, which means you owe now 90 instead of 100 zuz. Okay? But if it was tam and you only owed half, you would only pay 45 zuz. Okay, which means in terms of the appreciation of the carcass, you only get 1/4, not a half. Because what you're doing is you're getting half of the appreciation of the carcass if it's muad, and a half of that if it's tam, because you're paying half. So it's only a quarter appreciation if it's tam. Is that clear, guys?
That's me.
Okay, that's perfect. So this opinion is held obviously by by the majority of poskim. All right, so let's just go on. I felt like we labored this quite a bit, but not my fault. And there's a question. Rav Yochanan's explanation is supported by the resolution of another difficulty on its basis. And that is also the explanation of that which Rav Yehuda asked in the Brisa that will shortly be cited. Rav Yehuda reasoned, now that you have said that the merciful one, okay, was compassionate towards the damager in regard to that, he takes a portion of the appreciation of the carcass to mitigate his cost. It might have been thought that if an ox worth 5 selam, which is 20 zuz, gored another ox worth a manna, which is 100 zuz, and the carcass is worth 50 zuz, this one takes half the live ox, and that one takes half the live ox, and this one takes half the dead one, and that one takes half the dead one, and thereby profits. So, all right, guys, I'm going to just explain to you the mass, right? the ox, the attacking ox is worth 20 zuz, right? And what happens is it gored an ox that was worth 100 zuz. And the carcass is now worth 50 zuz. So if a carcass is worth 50 zuz, as the damager and damaged party, my recording is stopped. Gavin's got the full recording. As the damager and damaged party, if the carcass is worth 150 zuz, we each get 25 zuz. Do you get that, Gav?
Yeah.
Okay, so what I'm saying is my attacking ox is worth 20 zuz. Your ox that was, mine was a good aimer and it hit your ox in the heart, it was worth 100 zuz. Your carcass is worth 50 zuz. So it means that each of us, as the damager and damaged, my ox attacked yours, we share 25 zuz each of the carcass. Now the living ox, you actually get 10 zuz and I get 10 zuz. Does that make sense?
Very good.
So what happens is my ox was only worth 20 zuz. But now I'm getting from your ox, if we share the profit, 35 zuz. Does that make sense?
25 plus 10.
Yeah, no. Okay, so my attacking ox is worth 20 zuz, Kev. My ox attacks your ox. As the damager and damaged, we partners in this transaction. We each get of the living ox 10 zuz, because my ox was worth 20. So you got 10. Now you had an ox worth 100 zuz. My ox was puny, but it attacked your ox in the heart. It killed it. Now your carcass was worth 50 zuz. You owe me as the damager 25 zuz. So now from having an animal that was only worth 20 zuz, I've made a 15 zuz profit. So that's the question on the Gemara of Rav Yehuda, is Rav Yehuda says, does the damager profit? Because now he's profiting by 15 zuz. So since he's profiting by 15 zuz, is such a thing allowed? Because we understand that the master, the merciful one, Hashem, said that the damager can partake in the appreciation of the carcass. But there's an issue. What's the issue? Is that at the end of the day, if the damager takes half the live ox, which is 10 zuz, and half the carcass, which is 25 zuz, you have 35 zuz, which is more than his live ox is worth, right? So it might have been thought that we must nevertheless fulfill the directive of they shall sell the live ox and divide the money, and the dead one too they shall divide. So the reason why Rav Yehuda gave credence to this thought, and he actually needed to refute it, is that Rav Yehuda holds, as Rav Yochanan explained, that the damager does share in the benefit of appreciation in the value of the carcass. And since the merciful one extended the damager this consideration, there is room for thought that he's also allowing the damager, Hashem is also allowing the damager to profit in the rare case where the carcass is worth more than his live ox. That was an explanation by Rashi. Okay? So what we have to learn there is, and furthermore it states, he shall surely pay. So what does it mean from this? Well, in Shmot chapter 21:36, it's going to explain what the word means. But what the principle is the word he shall pay. Literally in the verse in Shmot, it says, pay he shall pay. It says shalem yeshalem, which means it alludes to two different payments. So the one is for tam and the one is for muad. And this teaches that in every case, the damager must pay and is not allowed to profit. This is according to Rashi. Because the merciful one did not allow the damager to take a profit instead of paying. He merely allowed the damager who is liable to reduce his degree of liability through the carcass's appreciation. So Rashi agrees with this, Tosfos, Rabbeinu Peretz, Maharsha, Pnei Yeshua. So basically this verse directs them to divide the value of the carcass. It only refers to the appreciation in the value of the carcass, but not to the principal value. So what that is actually saying is that we can't share, in the odd case that the carcass is worth more than my attacking ox, we can't share in the principal value and just split the profit. What we can say is if I was going to owe money, that could be mitigated against some of my losses by half. But and then if it's a tam, I get the quarter of that appreciation because it's half the muad, because payment of muad is full, but the carcass is half shared between damage and damage. And therefore you take that amount, and then when you divide that by 2, because it's a tam, then it works out that the appreciation, 3/4 of which goes to the damaged party and 1/4 of the appreciation to the damager, if it was tam. So what we say here is there can never be a case where the damager can profit as a result. He can mitigate costs and lower his liability, but that is all. Okay? So, and how do we know this? Because there's a verse that's stated, and furthermore it is stated. So what's the first point? In other words, is there never a damager profits? Why is that term insufficient? Because if there's a rebuttal and you say that the argument is that we never find a damager that profits, that maybe applies to a case where there's a loss to the damaged party. But what happens, guys, if there's no loss to the damaged party? In other words, the case that we learned up until now is that the damaged party is still losing 50 zuz. His carcass is worth 50, but he's lost 50 zuz. So in that case, we can understand why the damager can't profit. How can he profit when the damaged party is at a loss? Why can one Jew be elated with joy when another Jew suffers? It can't be. So we're saying, hang on, what happens if there's a case where the damaged party doesn't lose any money? Can the damager and damaged now share in the profit together? That's a different question. Okay? We learn so we're saying, hang on a second. So let's take an ox that's worth 5 salam, which is 20 zuz. And that ox that is worth 20 zuz caught another ox that was worth 20 zuz, 5 salam. Okay? So if it's, and the carcass after appreciation of death is worth 35 zuz, which means my ox is 20, it attacked Kevin's ox, it's worth 20. Now, all of a sudden, I would owe technically 10 zuz if it was tam. But now Kevin's carcass appreciated where it is worth 30 zuz. So now Kevin had a dead ox at living ox at 20 zuz. Now it's dead and the carcass is appreciated to 30 zuz because the price of steak has gone through the roof. So now Kevin, as the damaged party, has made a 10 zuz profit. Now, does he share that with me? Where we earn 5 zuz each out of the living carcass, okay? And then he earns, so firstly, let's take it like this. My attacking ox is worth 20 zuz. Kevin's damaged and I'm the attacker. We share the living ox. Kevin gets 10 zuz for that, I get 10 zuz. Now his dead ox went from 20 zuz to 35. So now it's worth 30 zuz. So then Kevin gets 15 zuz of his dead carcass and I get 15 zuz. So we're both scoring and having 35 zuz profit. So in a case where the damaged party doesn't get injured, is it possible to imagine that the damager takes a share of the profit? That's what it's asking. So the term, when Rav Yehuda says, and furthermore it is stated, he shall surely pay. The verse says, Shalem Yishalem, and he shall surely pay. And that teaches in the pasuk that the owner of the ox that gores pays for damages, but the owners never take a share of the profits accrued through the damage. So we're saving, even in the case where the damaged party is now better off, or at least hasn't lost any money, the damager can never share in any profits whatsoever. That's what we're learning from the verse, in case you would have come to
and
that.
What happens if it's the same with what you're talking about, if the carcass is worth so much that if the guy's made no loss, why does the damager have to pay anything then?
Yeah, why?
Okay, because we're talking about a case where just like, I'll tell you what, just like if the animal depreciates, the carcass, the damager wouldn't have to suffer that loss. So too, if the ox appreciates, the damager doesn't get a benefit, right? So we're saying there's a difference The only obligation of the damager, to a certain extent, is to make financial restitution between the living animal and the dead. He's got an obligation as far as that's concerned. That doesn't go away. According to Rabbi Meir, it doesn't go away at all. Most cases, like 9 out of 10, the carcass depreciates.
Yes.
Most cases. So then, if the damaged party is going to take the hit, you have to pay. If the damaged party is in luck and it does appreciate, Rabbi Meir says it is the benefit of the damaged party, and the damager gets no share of that appreciation, since he would not be responsible for the depreciation. It's only fair that the damaged party takes the advantage as well as the disadvantage. It's fair. Rabbi Yehuda says that partners in the living and dead ox, so therefore, both the damaged and the damager take the hit and the loss for the deterioration of the death of the carcass, and therefore, if it appreciates, both of them can benefit. The damaged party in terms of actual financial gain and the principal amount, and the damager in terms of lessening his losses through liability reduction, exactly as Gavin said. So I'm agreeing with you, Gav. Yeah. I'm absolutely agreeing with you, according to Rabbi Yehuda, not according to Rabbi Meir.
Good to Rabbi Yehuda.
Okay, so we've got about 7 minutes. Let me just go through 1 or 2 parts. We could finish this. The Gemara returns to its discussion of a dispute in our Mishnah between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda, and the Brisa started at the beginning of the discussion on 34a. Rabbi Meir interpreted the verse, "And the dead one too they shall divide," as teaching that the damaged party is reimbursed for half of his loss through the sale of the live ox. Okay. Rabbi Yehuda apparently doesn't agree with this interpretation, since Rabbi Yehuda interprets the verse as teaching that the damager gets a share of the dead ox and benefits from its appreciation. Okay, so all it's saying is Rabbi Meir says it's only the difference between the living animal's value and the dead animal, and the restitution for the difference the damager has to make. Rabbi Yehuda doesn't agree. He said that they have to share in the living as well as the dead animal carcass and then split the profits. So now that the Gemara is going to focus on Rabbi Yehuda's opinion, Rav Achad bar Tachlifa said to Rava, if so, we will find a case in which, according to Rabbi Yehuda, the owner of a tub pays more than half damages. So what the discussion of this argument is, we know that a muad pays full damages. We've discussed this once before. Does a tum animal, the owner of a tum, pay 3/4 damages, or does he only pay half? Remember, we went through this before many dafs ago. In terms of, does it just mean that, in other words, his liability is reduced somewhat, or is it literally by half? Are there cases in which it could be 3/4, for example? So let me give you a specific example, like in the commentaries of Schottenstein. So if an attacking ox worth 50 zuz gored an ox that was worth 40 zuz, and the carcass is worth 20 zuz, what is left? So the thing of it is, you have Reuven's ox worth 50 zuz, it attacked Shimon's ox worth 40 zuz, and the carcass is 20 zuz. So for the difference between the live and the dead animal is 20 zuz. Does that make sense? So that's one particular thing. Then, and half the damage, if it's tum, means I only owe 10 zuz as the owner of a tum ox. Okay, since I only owe 10 zuz, and the live ox is worth what, guys? 50 zuz.
50.
So it means if we split the live ox, we get 25 zuz each. Okay, and your damage is 20 zuz, and your carcass is worth 20. So basically, what happens is as follows: is I get as the damaged party, Gavin, you get 25 zuz for the living ox because we split it, you and I. Fine. And then on the dead ox, we get 20. It's worth 20 zuz. We get 10 zuz each. So now you're earning 35 zuz because my live ox is worth so much money. So instead of your damage in total was 40 zuz, but you're getting 35 zuz back, which means in total you're not getting half back. You know what you're getting? 87.5% back. 87.5%. The difference, but because you're sharing half the living ox and half the dead ox. And what we're finding out is, can such a thing take place? Okay. So basically, in the Torah stated, they shall sell the live ox. So Rav Yehuda holds that the depreciation, the death caused to the gored animal, they divide in the value of the live one. In other words, he agrees with Rabbi Meir that Scripture does teach that the damaged party is reimbursed for only half his loss through the sale of the living animal. So we're saying there's no issue as far as that's concerned. They both agree you make financial restitution on the difference. The point of disagreement is about the carcass of the dead one. Does that make sense? That's the issue. So we're saying if the living one was worth so much, is there a cap on the time that you only pay up to half on the body of the damaging animal, or can you pay more than half, but not up to full? So the answer is as follows. The ruling, okay. So Rav Achabatach Lefa counters, where does Rav Yehuda derive this? Rava responds, it's from the verse, and the dead one too they shall divide, as expounded by Rabbi Meir. Rav Tachlefa asks, but Rav Yehuda expounded that verse as teaching that this one takes half the live ox and that one takes half the live ox. This one takes half the dead one, that one takes half the dead one. Rava answers, Rav Yehuda holds that if this would be so, that the verse only comes to teach that the damaged party is compensated for no more than half the loss caused by death, as Rabbi Meir maintains. In other words, you cannot earn more than half. Scripture should merely have written, in the dead one they shall divide. What is the meaning of the term in the dead one too? By virtue of this additional term in two, we learn from this two laws. The laws expounded by Rabbi Meir, as well as the law that each party takes half of the dead animal and shares half the benefit of the appreciation of the animal. In conclusion, they all agree that they shall divide and there shall be no more than half for time paid. If the damaged party is never compensated for more than half of his loss. That's the conclusion. Okay, we've got 1 minute left. Let me just see something. Yeah, so he's basically saying in the dead one too they shall divide, meaning there's still a cap that is paid up to half damages for time. It's never 3/4. So the damaged party cannot benefit by more than half of its time either. That's it in conclusion.
And the damager doesn't have to pay ever more than half. So it benefits both, obviously.
It benefits, this is benefiting the damager, actually.
No, sorry. No, you're right. It's only benefiting.
You're absolutely right.
It's only benefiting the damager, sorry.
All right. Thanks for attending. I really appreciate it. I now couldn't see you, but it was lovely having you here, mate.
Yeah,
I really, really appreciate it.
King Arthur, you can go back to your subjects now.
Yeah,
I am.
Go back to
I'm
your
with my
subjects.
subjects. You're my subject.
Take one of your subjects and expel them from your excommunicate them.
exactly. Yeah.
Let me see.
Yes, the first one you find, even if they're under 3, doesn't matter.